Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And so happy that you are here joining me as I'm about to share how to remain positive amongst the fires of life. Oops, let me just check them off. Okay, so here I am. Oh, let me just see because I think I have something recording in the background. I'm just going to close those things behind. Just give me a moment. Just give me a moment. Okay. Here we go. Great. Sorry about that, guys. That's what it's called. Just being in the moment and popping on and sharing my story. So, what I'd love for you guys to do, for those of you who are here live right now, tell me who you are. Go into the comments in LinkedIn and tell me where you are, who you are, where you're calling from, what actually got you interested in this topic, and fire away some questions, whatever you want. I'm just going to start with my story here a little bit. So, I used to live in Toronto, Ontario until 3 years ago, just pre-COVID there or around COVID, that we moved to Kelowna, BC. Beautiful city, town, whatever you want to call this. It's sort of like a small city. Um, and what I really love about Kelowna is all the wildlife, the mountains, the people who are so just calmer than other cities, who are so kind, and just a really great place to move to. Now, the fires hit us in Kelowna on Thursday evening or Thursday afternoon. We started to spot the fires across the lake from us. And we just have a small bridge that goes from our side, from what we call Kelowna to West Kelowna, or West Bank, as the Indigenous people call it. And so we can see across the lake, because it means a huge lake lengthwise, like a finger lake. But we could see the fires starting over there. And there'd been fires going on in many places. Osoyoos, it's about an hour and 14 minutes away. Like right now, I think there's 380 fires, if I'm not mistaken. And I think somewhere around 160, if I'm not mistaken, that are out of control. And so when I saw it across the lake, we were all looking at it, and I could see the speed of the fire moving. It just started like a flicker. You turn your head, 5 minutes later, you turn around, and it had moved significantly, and it just kept going and going and going. And my heart went out to the people over there, and I kept thinking about the animals, because people can get in their cars. They understand, we have our ways of communicating now with the radios and internet and the news that we didn't have many, many years ago, but we have that now. And so I was really, I think, mesmerized might be the word, by the fire, the speed it was moving at, and what was really happening over there. But I kept saying to my husband, we're very lucky that we're on the other side of the lake. My sister-in-law, who's environmental biologist, who lives with my brother 4.5 hours away from here. I was on the phone with her, and she said, "No, don't be fooled. The fire can jump the lake." And I said, "What do you mean it can jump the lake?" She said, "Oh yeah, there's, the sparks will jump the lake." And there's been known fire sparks from BC that have gone all the way to Spain and started fires there. So it's amazing when we are in it, how much we learn. And so I was thinking, no, I think we're going to get this settled. I don't think it's going to come over. Well, that night, early morning, the fire did jump the lake, and jumped the lake to Knox Mountain. And we couldn't really see as much on this side as we could see on the other side. But people were being evacuated, of course, in West Kelowna, in West Bank. And people started being evacuated from Glenmore in the areas here. And we were a little nervous because, and I'm not going to say so much nervous, like we weren't worried, because worry doesn't serve you. But it's important to be curious. More than concerned, it's important to be curious. So that's my first lesson for you today, is to not not get worried and start creating stories about what could happen, but be realistic and say, okay, let me be curious. Where are things now? What's in my control? What would be the smart thing to do? And eventually, during the day, as the fire started moving quite rapidly towards the airport and UBC, University of British Columbia, which is just basically 8 minutes up the road from us, they evacuated that area, and the airport was closed for danger that the airport would go on fire. And I spoke to my family. My daughter lives, basically 3 minutes down the road from us. And we said, okay, what happens from here? How is this all going to work out? Well, how do they evacuate people? So I started to research a little bit about how they evacuate people. And you're basically given, if you're a knock on the door, they say, you've got 2.5 minutes to get out of here. And I thought to myself, well, 2.5 minutes, how do I have time to gather my things to go? Well, you don't. So when you're on alert, you might be a little bit more ready, but you don't know how fast that fire can move. And when I saw it the other night, I was like realizing this can go pretty quickly. So I said to my family, we need to be prepared. We need to load up the car with all the things that we feel are necessary to bring. So what was in our control was, how much room did we have in the car? We have my mother with us, who's 101 years old, who's great but needs her walker. She has 2 walkers, and we could only take one. We had the dog. We have a visitor from Toronto who couldn't get back because the flights were canceled. So there were 5 of us plus the dog in our SUV. So we only had the back. And the first thing we thought was, we need to bring all the dried food we can bring, so that if we're stranded on the road, we've got something there. Then we thought we need some water. So we got the 5-gallon jug of water filled up. We took a tent, some sleeping bags, just in case we were stranded. Like sometimes you think, I'm just going to drive up to my brother's place 4.5 hours away, but isn't everybody driving out, right? So we had to think about that. So we packed up, personal papers. We had some old photos, but we couldn't fit them into the SUV because we had, luggage with our clothes, necessary clothes, necessary papers, certificates, birth certificates, insurance, that kind of thing, tax papers. And we had to choose and leave some things that were important to us behind. So we took the hard drives from our computer, but we didn't take the computers. And well, luckily I had a laptop, so that was fine with my hard drive beside it. And I still had to function because I'm coaching, I'm working on the phone. So I had to think, what do I need here? So that was interesting in choosing things. And we had to put peace in our mind that there are a lot of things here. As you can see, I've got like 3 bookcases behind me and 2 more on the side here, 3 more on the side, filled with books that some I haven't read, some are precious to me. And I had to think about, how was I going to just leave this behind? And I thought, well, these are replaceable. And so off we went. We took off. My daughter packed up her car with 3 kids and the dog and her husband, thinking they were going to head out to Calgary. But the roads were closed going into West Kelowna on the bridge that heads to Vancouver. And the road was closed going north towards the airport to get out through Vernon Lake Country up north. So the only road out was Highway 33, which is close where we live. And that means we have to go down and around to get to where we were going. But that's fine. That was about 4.5 hours. So we packed up and off we went. And we brought things in, like the fire department says, bring in, patio cushions and things like that, umbrellas. Like you don't want to create more hazard, more fire feeding things on the outside. So we packed up and we left. That was Friday, understanding that we don't know whether our house will be here or not. But now I want to point out the realistic and the optimistic perspective that I had. My first optimistic move was to say, I'm going to put clean sheets on my bed. That's going to tell my house that I'm coming back. So I thought, that's okay, put clean sheets. Now, the realistic thing is I didn't waste my time doing laundry. All right. So I take the two and I balance and I say, where can I find a little humor in this? Where can I, be a little bit positive, feed my mind with positive thoughts? So that's what we did. And we talked about it as a family. let's just move on. Let's, send good energy to the people who are out there being evacuated. Let's send good energy to our home, and let's just move from there. So my daughter was still staying, waiting to see if they were going to move because her husband was still working, because the city's still working, right? And we went up there, slept Friday night at my brother's place, left my mother there, left our valuables there, jewelry, papers, things like that. And we came back on Saturday night so that my son could work in the city on Sunday morning. And we could be here to keep others informed. We have a couple of people, our neighbor and somebody not far down the road, that are out of the country. So we're keeping them informed on how things are going. We're keeping an eye on things, but it's really bizarre because we could see the fire across the lake on the Thursday night, but we can't see the fire here around us. Just a lot of smoke. The smoke is really, really thick. Yesterday we couldn't see our neighbor. We could see our neighbor's house, but we couldn't see anything beyond that. And today it cleared up a little bit, but it's getting smoky again. The situation is that they're holding the fire where it is at that line. That's just about 3 minutes away from my daughter's place, but like I said, about 6-7 minutes away from us. And we are waiting to see if that fire is going to move or not. Now, we know the army has arrived. We know that there are 200 South African firefighters and 100 Mexican firefighters that are arriving tomorrow and after tomorrow, as well as 8 specialist firefighters from Australia. So we're getting some help in here because the manpower is suffering. Firefighters are out there for 48 hours at a time. They're exhausted, and the smoke is very thick where they are. But I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, everybody's doing their part of what they can do, and there's not much more we have control over. My thought today was really about Mother Nature, and that things will happen. Things happen for a reason, whether it's because, vegetation has to be rebuilt here, whether it's because people have to learn certain lessons, whatever the reason that this is all happening. I trust, whether your word is God, the universe, the energy, Mother Nature, whatever your words are, I trust that this is all happening for a reason, and that if we are meant to lose our home here or not, it will happen. That humans don't have the power to push fire and water away if it is determined to get past us. That's the way I look at it. And I look at it in a way of, it is what it is. Life is happening. So again, just drop in the comments where you're joining me from and what your interest is, and if you have any questions. So why did I do this podcast, or why did I do this live stream today? Because I thought, how do we teach people to remain positive amongst other fires in our lives? So I look at what's going on in healthcare, and I think to myself, there's a fire within the healthcare system. It may not be flames, but it's a fire. It's a danger. It's alive and blazing in our life. And so how do we cope with that? Well, the first thing is to stop the negative chatter in our mind. Okay. So I look at it as the very first saboteur in our mind being the judge. And I talk about this in my mental fitness webinars. The judge is the most powerful saboteur. So it's going to judge, whether, why is this happening to me? Like, what did I do? Why is the world such an angry place? Like, I just go to this place of negativity when the judge gets into my mind, right? Or I say, yes, this is a conspiracy theory and people are, doing this to us and it's man-made and there's idiots out there, like there's so much judgment going on. Or why is it happening to Kelowna or BC or whatever? And I just can't get caught up in that. I realize that in my life, that the more we get caught up in judging ourselves and others and circumstances, the more fear we set into ourselves, the more anger, the more destructive emotions we have that do not serve us. And then, we have the accomplices of the judge, which is like pleaser, like go out and please everybody, or the avoider, or avoiding talking to people about things because whatever we're thinking, like all these accomplices that our saboteurs are, that put these negative thoughts into our mind. The sage powers that we have, which the very first one that we always use, is the empathy. And being empathetic with myself, being empathetic with others, is the place of saying, what's going on over there? What's going on in your mind? And how do I help you calm that? How do I help you get rid of those, judging thoughts or those behaviors that don't serve you? So this is really important, to take back our power and ask ourselves, like one of the saboteurs is the controller. That was one of my top saboteurs years ago. And it was trying to control everything. And in healthcare, we're trying to control, our supervisors or the system, the organizations. And although there are conversations to be had and ideas on how to make things better, that is a way of coming about it in a positive way. If we start to beat ourselves up and beat others up, we get caught up and we're feeding the struggle, we're feeding the challenges, we're adding fuel to the fire. Couldn't be a better analogy to that, but we're adding fuel to the fire. And what we need to do is to focus on where there is growth, where there are possibilities. The sage mind always says, the sage perspective always says, where there's a challenge, there's a gift and an opportunity. So I look at this and I go, where's the gift and the opportunity for things to change, whether it's in the physical fire that I'm in, or whether it's the fire of your life, whatever that means, right? So if it's in healthcare, where's the fire and what's the gift here? Maybe it was time for healthcare to start changing the way we're doing things, and it needed to get worse before it got better. I mean, we know that. When we have addicts, drug addicts, it's almost like they have to hit rock bottom before they can come back up and see the light. It's the same thing. I mean, it's all a way of saying, when is enough enough? And we have to hit rock bottom somewhere to say enough is enough. It's how humans function. Is it the right way to function? Can we be more preventative? Can we be more working together versus making a problem bigger? Like I said, fueling the fire. So that's kind of, the words of wisdom I have around that. I look at it as also, what will be will be. It's going to happen. What has us shift as human beings in generations, in years to come, are the challenges that we face and the decisions we do and make to change things. When we get too comfortable, and as human beings, we get so comfortable sometimes, even in our discomfort and our pains, we don't look for change. We don't look to make things better because it's too much work, right? It's just easier to just be quiet and keep going the way we go. Conflict, which to me is like small fires, is not a bad thing. Conflict is a room for us to have perspectives and choose how we can learn from each other and grow and move forward from that. So as human beings, what's the lesson for us here? What's going on in Maui? What's going on in other parts of the world? I mean, we can stand back in our own little worlds and judge others or judge the circumstances or always look, it's funny because I'm thinking about people who've reached out to me, and I've been surrounded by nothing but love from all my contacts in Europe and Lebanon and South Africa and all over Canada, the United States. I mean, I don't think there's a part of the world that hasn't reached out and sent love and support my way. And there's also that place where sometimes somebody goes, this is terrible. That's the judge. That's the judge saying this is terrible. Is it terrible? That's a judgment. I don't want to get stuck on whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. Again, those are judgments. It just is. What do we have control over? How do we keep ourselves safe and then move on and help our neighbors? So my first thing was to keep myself safe. I needed to evacuate myself, even though I wasn't under alert or evacuation yet. And that could happen or it could not happen. I'm not sure. Still, wondering what's going to happen. But I needed to do what I needed to do to protect myself and my family and my closest possessions, if you like. And so I did that. And then I came back. And on Sunday, I went and helped an organization who had food to go deliver food to the rescuers, so fire stations, police stations. Everything was closed because they're all out, working on the roads or in the fires. And so I thought, how do I bring this food to others? Like, who's in need? So I found a lot of motorhomes, like in the shopping mall or on the side of the road or wherever. They're all evacuees, and I went up and spoke to some evacuees who were there with their father in one trailer and the neighbor in the other, and their family of 5 in another one. And it's not because people have homes and motorhomes and all that they are financially stable enough to be going out to restaurants or surviving out on their own. It takes extra money, right? It takes extra resources. So I dropped off food for the evacuees. And I felt that was the best I could do at that moment, was to try to help others, even though I'm in a place, not evacuated yet, like I said, but in a place of where I could be very selfish and start sitting in my own corners and worrying. So what are we doing right now? We're at home. We're staying safe. We're staying in the clean air because outside is very hard on the lungs. Taking the dog out as necessary, keeping her in as much as possible because it's not healthy for her. Sending some good energy, or for some people it might be called praying, for others, for ourselves, but for more those in needs. Spending time being grateful for the people who are out there helping us, who are, they'll help the helpful hands, like the 200 South Africans and the 100 Mexicans and the 8 Australians, all firefighters coming to help us. Very grateful for that. Grateful for my friends and family. And here's where I want to bring it back to you in your own fire, is how do you maintain sanity, positivity, joy in your life when you're struggling, when you're going through struggles? Like, as a nurse at the bedside right now, it's extremely difficult. I get that. And there are choices. Sometimes the choices are not easy. Do I want to stay here and make the best of the situation? Do I want to move on? Who can I talk to? Who do I get support? How do I get ideas? I remember years ago when I was going into, when I moved away from the bedside and went into restaurant business with my parents to help them out and started doing coaching, etc., and still doing some nursing. I remember nurses saying to me, I don't know how to do anything else. You're so lucky. I don't know how to do anything other than nursing. Well, you know what? When push comes to shove, there is a way to find other things to do, or how to use your nursing in different areas, or how to use nursing right where you are and make it better, make it a positive place. I remember in one place when I had had enough of people bickering and complaining, and I brought in bagels and cream cheese for all the departments. And one guy said to me, why did you bring bagels and cream cheese? And I said, well, because you know what? I'm tired of focusing on the challenges, and I need some positivity around me. And so I just thought it would bring up the spirits a little bit. And he said, well, it's going to take a hell of a lot more than bagels and cream cheese to make this better. And I said, well, that's the attitude you can keep. It's not mine today. For today, that's not my attitude. By the end of the day, he came back to me and he said, you know what? You're right. This did make a difference. And thank you. So my goal was not to change his attitude, but to offer the opportunity for his attitude or anybody else's attitude to change. But first, mine. Mine had to change before I could change anybody else's or help anybody else to change theirs. So what is it you can do amongst your fire in your life? Whether it's your personal relationships, whether it's your health, whether it's where you work, whether it's your finances, whatever it is, where can you focus on celebrating small wins? The bagels and cream cheese versus the fire. Like, where do you, what are you feeding? The fire or the small wins? I think that's where we really need to start. And when we start to talk about it in that way, we start to convince ourselves that is our truth. Like I said, when the fire hit, I didn't panic. I didn't get worried or scared. I came from a place of, how do I take control of what I have control over? How do I make things better? And so, we did things like, we have our guest there from Toronto who can't get a flight out. And so we sat down and watched a movie all together. We watched Fiddler on the Roof. Wow. Talk about, a movie where there's traditions and there's ways of doing things, and yet times are changing and people are trying to convince each other to change. It was a good human reminder of how we function, how we think. And it was a great way to spend time with our family and converse about those things after. We're playing games, board games together. I'm not busy cleaning my house because I don't know where my house will be next week. Positive, I'll change the sheets, but I'm not going to go and clean the dirty laundry, right? I mean, there's certain things that you want to approach because you need to continue in the fire. Like in looking after our patients, we still need to continue to look after our patients, even if we can't look after them exactly the way we want to. It would be nice to have 3 or 6 patients to spend time with and take care of fully the way we value humanity and care. And what is the best thing I can do today? And show, if I can't sit down for 10 minutes with a patient and hold their hand and listen to their stories, how can I take 2 seconds to put my hand on their shoulder and tell them that I care? What are the 2-second things that I can do that may not be the 30-minute things that I used to do? And that's okay. For now, it's okay. And you need to keep telling yourself that. Because if you just complain, it perpetuates the problem. It makes the fire bigger. So please, if you're listening here now, you've joined in, please let me know that you're here, where you're calling from. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer. I'm here to look at it and it's okay, whatever the questions are. They can be questions from a place of fear. They can be questions that are, or comments. Doesn't really matter. Just let me know what you're thinking, and let me help you to see things maybe in a brighter light, or maybe even how to handle other people. I had a situation the other day when somebody made a very strong comment that was really out of place. And I, first of all, empathized with myself, saying, okay, who am I in this? Is there anything I need to change? And then I realized, from a very, it's an anonymous quote, but a very powerful quote to me, is the place of saying, what's hurting you so much that you feel the need to hurt me? And that's exactly where it was. It was from this person is in stress, in fear, and unfortunately moved that energy to me, but I didn't take it on. I simply said, we're all in this together. Nobody's abandoning anybody. We're here to support each other. And what is it that you need? What do you need in reassurance from me so that we can move forward and help each other? That's a sage response. That's a way, when somebody's bickering at you in the hospital, let's say, one of your supervisors, one of your coworkers, there's a place of saying, I'm noticing you're really stressed out here. What's going on? And they can still continue to point the finger at you, but it might be that place of saying, I want to support you and I want to understand what you're feeling, and I will take ownership of anything that belongs to me, but I also want to just support you in maybe looking at what you're believing in or how you're perceiving things. What do we need to do to make this right? Isn't that a cool comment to tell somebody? What do we need to do to make this right? I'll tell you a story. When it wasn't healthcare, but it was an organization where I was a trainer coach, and a couple of leaders came to me, and we had a board meeting, and they were basically almost standing up at the board and just pointing the finger at me and blaming me for something that I hadn't done. And I just sat there and at that point, I used what they call crucial conversations, or I call it courageous conversations, where first of all, I mentioned how I was feeling, not what they were making me feel, but how I was feeling, and then how I wanted to move forward from here. So when they were pointing the fingers, I just waited for them to finish. And then I just said, I am feeling um, a sense in my chest of a heavy weight in my chest that's making me want to defend myself. But I'm going to just take a breath. And I took a breath. And I said, and you know, right now, what is it we need to do for us to move forward from this? So I didn't defend myself and say, I didn't do this. I didn't, I just basically said, what do we need to do to move forward from this? Well, I got to tell you, if you could videotape that moment when they just kind of plopped themselves in the chair and just went, oh, like they were expecting me to get all revved up like they were. And I didn't meet them where they were, because if we meet people where they are, again, we're fueling the fire. That's not what we want to do. So I just calmed the fire down, named it, what was going on, and just decided, what do we do from here? How do we make this better? How do we make this better? Not how do you make it better? How do I make it better? How do we make it better? We're in this together. Isn't that a cool, like, if you think just for a moment, if we could all speak to each other like that, wouldn't that help change things? Anyway, listen, I am looking forward to hearing from anybody who wants to share with me, ask questions. I'm just going to check. Uh, I'm just going to check my Facebook to see if anything happening now. That's at LinkedIn. Let's take a look at Facebook and see if there's anything going on there. If there are any questions that I can answer from there. We're going to go talk about yes, let's go on to live and healthcare photo video, live video. Here we go. Nope, they want me live now. Okay. In any case, I'm going to go back to the Facebook questions after the broadcast and answer anything there. I'm more than willing to have a conversation with anybody who wants to learn more about this. Is this an opportunity for us to actually bring this into an organization and have people who are struggling together, who are making up assumptions and stories about each other, fueling the fire? How do we have that conversation to start toning that down? I think that's a really important conversation. And this is an example, not only in healthcare, it's example politically around the world. I mean, there are challenges all over, and we can complain about them or complain about them, which I just love. I have yet to say, when they don't do this and they don't listen to us, and I keep going, who are these people? Who are they? Like, let's get specific and let's get them around the table here and have a conversation with them and really see what's going on. I was talking to a client this morning, actually, about land work. There's a thing in coaching, relationship coaching, we talk we talk about what's called lands work. So we go and we visit each other's land, which is really cool. And I want you to just think about this for a moment. I go and, I had an organization in Ottawa once where we did this on Zoom, actually, and we had all the names of the different people. So the RNs were talking about their land. The RPNs, or LPNs as some people know them, were talking about their land. And every time we talked about a land, we went and visited their land. So we left all our luggage in our own lands, and we went to the land of the CEO, and we listened to the CEO, and we got curious and said, what's it like to be the CEO right now in a healthcare organization where there are cutbacks, etc.? And the CEO would express, how difficult it is. You're only given a certain amount of budget. You've got certain restraints, and people think, I've got all these demands coming from here, and I've got, me asking for more here so that I can help the demands, but it's not helping, and here's my situation, and I've got to make decisions that are really difficult under the circumstances. And so I can get curious from the land of the RN or RPN or whatever, and start asking questions about, so when somebody says this to you, how does that make you feel? And how do you handle that? How does your thought process work? So I get curious in their land. Then we all go back to our lands, and then somebody comes and visits my land, and I get to share what I'm experiencing without blame or judgment. Remember, this is where we need to remove all of that and just talk about from me, from what I'm experiencing, my perspective, how I see it. Now, everybody's land has a 2% truth. We all experience what we experience and see it the way we see it and believe it the way we believe it because it is our truth. Is it the truth? I don't think there's any the truth. I think it's just how we see things, how we're experiencing things. So sharing that is really important. It was really interesting when I did this in Ottawa. I remember we had the names on the boardroom table and everybody was standing around and going to the lands. And suddenly the social worker spoke up and said, my paper's not here. My name's not here. Well, it was stuck underneath another person's label or title. And she said, well, isn't that typical? The social worker's always left out. And so we quickly put down the social worker land and we went to visit the social worker land and asked, tell us more about that. There's this feeling that you have that it's always like that you're the last to be heard, that the last to be, that's what we were hearing. And so she got an opportunity to speak from that place so that we could start understanding what was going on that side instead of making assumptions. The brilliance of it is that we get to now create our land. How do we bring the best of all those lands into our land, into the new land where we can function from? So I like the fact that you were transparent about the budget that you have and the choices you need to make and how difficult they are. Let's bring that into our world and let's keep that conversation open. I like the fact that you're saying that at the end of a shift, all you think about is how poorly you've done and you're not focused on the great things that you've done. So let's bring this to this land. Let's work with that. See, this is where we remain positive amongst the fires of life. Does that make sense to everyone? Like, this is really important. So what are we doing? We're taking the facts, not the emotions. We're taking the facts that we all bring to the table. And then from there, we say, what can we celebrate? What are the small wins we can celebrate right now amongst each other and say, hey, kudos, social worker. You did this in a remarkable amount of time based on the budget and the responses you're getting and all that. Kudos to you. That's a win. Kudos, CEO, that you've made a decision that was really difficult. Even though some of us may not agree with that decision, kudos that you had to make that decision and made it based on what you believed in. Like, isn't it time to start acknowledging the challenges that we all have in how we make our decisions or how we see things? It's really important. So that's how we remain positive amongst the fires of life. We start to have more conversations. Margaret Wheatley, very famous woman leader who has written books and done some leadership work in Africa, she writes about this and saying that the part of the biggest challenge we have is we're not having the conversations about this. We're all in our own little worlds and we're not conversing, talking about this and listening, going into that other person's land without all our luggage and going, yeah, but you don't understand. Yeah, but gotta let that go. We've got to let that go. If we're going to move forward or want anybody to listen to us, we also need to listen to them. And we need to, not agree with them. We might and we might not, but to understand their worldviews, where they're coming from. And those are based on experiences, not only in the workplace, but experiences as a child, the fear of abandonment, the fear of, of not being liked, all these things. I mean, there's so many complex pieces to why we think or behave the way we do. But the more we bring it out in the open and be vulnerable and allow others to be vulnerable by showing our vulnerability first, the better chance we have at succeeding all together. Remember, we're in this together, because if we're all trying to fight our own fires, then we're all coming from different ends and we're not going to accomplish anything. Does that help? There are moments, and I just want to go back to this whole reason that I did this call. I felt there was a lot to learn, and I realized as I was actually posting this to live stream just a little over an hour before the live stream happened, I started to get emotional inside and realizing that there is some pain, there is some sadness inside me, and that it's okay to stop there and visit that. Um, I think I'm just realizing how sore my throat is from the smoke, and I'm wondering if that's a place for me to look after myself right now. Do I need more water? Do I need to move away from the smoke? What's our next step? You know, pause, pause, be with what is. Ask yourself the questions about whether what you're thinking or how you're doing things is actually serving you or others. It's important. I yeah, I'm just I don't know what I'm feeling right now. And it's good to pause and not be, always on. When I get on camera or when we get on stage or we get in front of a group or whatever it is, we've got to be on. Not always. Sometimes it's just about being with what is there. When I'm coaching people, sometimes there's a self-management piece where, your story is triggering a story in me. And so how can I use that to help you? And sometimes just clearing the air, not being in the smoke of it all, right? And bring humor in. Nothing wrong with bringing humor. Kind of reminds me of the time when I was looking after my oncology patients, cancer patients who were, there for treatments every month, and some of them were doing well, some were not. And I remember the one thing that patients used to say to me is sometimes I would come in and I would be literally, and DeRoche, you're out there maybe listening to this. She was my buddy in healthcare. Do you remember the times we used to go in and do can dancing and singing for our patients on our rounds? Yeah, we did that. We sang and we danced on our rounds, and brought joy to our patients. Because happiness is circumstantial, right? Happiness is I'll be happy when I no longer have cancer. I'll be happy when I'm married, or I'll be happy when I have that perfect house or whatever. Joy is more of an attitude that's beyond the circumstances. So that's what we brought to our patients was joy. Because even though they might be dying, there's nothing wrong with having a positive and fun attitude in that moment. Now, 5 minutes later, we could be pulling the curtain, holding our patient's hand and crying with them. Our emotional states, up, down, sad, happy, doesn't really matter. They're there, they exist, and we are allowed to feel all of those emotions. We don't need to be with a dying patient and be miserable and sad and dying and, we're in the fire. Oh, we're going to die. Things are going to be. No. Is the fire touching me right now? Smoke wise, yes. Is it on my backyard and scooting me out of the house where that's my priority? No. So I can still have a laugh. I can still watch a movie. I can still play games with the family. All those things are possible now. Now, when something else calls my attention, that's when I need to shift and deal with that. And like I said, I went even in this call, I said, I suddenly felt a little bit of sadness in my heart. So be with it for a moment. Do I need to be there right now? I can visit it later. Or I need to visit it right now and talk about it. And that's okay. So I'm not going to keep you hanging on this. I'm hoping that some of these things have helped to see that somebody who's in the midst of the fire can also look at the positive things that are happening and look at the gifts and the opportunities. Like I said to my husband this morning, I said, if this house is meant to burn down and move us somewhere else, then that's the power of the fire that I have no control over. And we will deal with that if that happens. But if not, we're here right now and we're waiting to just make sure that we're 100% safe so that we can put our concentration fully somewhere else and not partially on what's going on around us. So I wish you the opportunity to bring more positivity amongst your fires. And I'm always, always here ready to have a conversation with anyone who is experiencing their own perspective of fire. And trust me, your fire may look very small compared to the fire that's in my backyard right now, but it's your fire and it's as big as mine because it is yours. So I never compare what's going on in the world to what is going on in your world or my world. It is our world, and is whatever emotions and feelings we have is ours to play with and to deal with and to take control of if we can, and only to take control of what we can and not try to take control of things we don't have control. So I hope this helps. Please reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. I am fully here for you, as I know many of you are out there fully here supporting me in different ways. And I'm really blessed for that. And I have such gratitude. And let's remain positive together. Let's do this. You are never going to be bothering me with anything you want to talk to me about until I have something else that takes priority. And right now it doesn't. You are as important as I am. So have yourself an awesome, positive, joyful day. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.